Welcome back. This is Annalise,
This is Rob.
and we are your nerd best friends.
This episode is all about our favorite creators and who we would put on a fictional Mount Rushmore.
Welcome to Nerd Best Friends, the podcast where we talk comics, D&D, pop culture, cosplay, basically all the stuff that makes you go, aha, there's my people. If you're feeling it, do us a favor, follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a fellow nerd and help us grow the nerd herd. Now strap in, roll for initiative, and let's get nerdy. It is episode 97, and we're talking about our favorite creators that we would put up on a fictional Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I don't remember where we got this idea. I'm sure we stole it from someplace, but that idea of like who is on your Mount Rushmore of nerdy legendary heroes, right? Your Mount Rushmore carved in, a 1,000 times larger than life, there forever, greatest creators. So that's what we are doing today.
I love it. And before we get to that, we have some nerd mail.
We do indeed. I was looking back at some write-ins, and we had listener Rose talking about an episode. I believe it was one where Dr. Intern Joan was on, and she was talking about The Price is Right. And we had a whole storytelling time about how when you guys were living in LA, of course, you guys went to the Price is Right. There was a story there. And for whatever reason, we talked about it being like, what a fun thing to do with your friend group or your work group. And so listener Rose wrote in to let us know that they have done team building exercises by going to Universal Studios in the past, but think the idea of taking her company to The Price is Right dressing the same with the name tags and jumping up and down would be an incredible experience. She loves the idea. And thank you for writing in, listener Rose.
Yeah, thank you, Rose. And also, I think we were talking about escape rooms. We were talking about that VR game that you went for Adam's bachelor party, like a few of those things we were talking about. But yeah, I can see a team building exercise being going on The Price is Right. The rumor is if you have so many people that you might be guaranteed that one of your people gets called up to the stage. So it's a whole incentive thing. At least they had that in the 90s. We knew one of our group was going to get pulled up, and they went through a little screening process. Each of us one by one with a table of people where they asked us questions, and they chose the oldest person. We were all 18-year-old college freshmen, and they chose the 21-year-old college junior or senior. So
okay.
That's the way it went.
What are they looking for? They're looking for the person who's not going to freeze up. They're looking for the person that looks best on camera. They're looking for, whatever. And then they want that big group because they want people cheering and
going crazy.
Acting the fool, going crazy when they get called up. So it's pretty fun. I still like the idea for me and all of my workmates as well. I think would be really fun.
I dare you to. And thanks for...
I got to figure out how I can get there. It'd be really fun.
And thank you for writing in, listener Rose, and send in your deep thoughts, nerd questions, or talk nerdy subjects that you would like us to cover by sliding into our DMs on social media or write us in an email, podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. And now as I scroll down the rest of the script, let's get into our Mount Rushmore of creators. Who would you permanently put in the side of land that belongs to Native people?
Okay, well, I didn't know you were going to set me up for something that was going to be...
No, we get the theory behind it. Obviously, yes, there is controversy about Mount Rushmore, but let's take the idea behind it.
Goodness.
Who would you like? Who would you put up on that pedestal of permanency, right? Because this was hard. I had a couple people that I thought about. I'm like, but would I put that person up there? I would not, right? Joss Whedon is one of those people I thought about. I would not put him up there.
No.
For various reasons. But he would not go on Mount Rushmore. So did you have the same struggle trying to come up with people?
My goodness, I don't know that I had that same... Maybe I did, but if I'm looking at my list, it is interesting because whatever I was naturally drawn to people that have already passed away, we kind of know what their deal is. They're not going to do something problematic in the near future that's going to make me this is going to look like a bad take.
Primarily, I have some on my list. I would say 3 on my list are not, but I would still put them up there with the hopes that they don't do anything problematic.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but yes, These are historical figures, even though they are recent
Yes.
historical figures.
Yes, yes. So talking about creators, we're talking about creators of nerd things specifically, or things that we are nerdy about, to be fair. We each chose 4 people. Are yours in rank order?
No, I mean, Mount Rushmore, they just, I don't know that there's an order from left. Is there an order from left to right on Mount
I
Rushmore?
mean,
I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
think there is on the actual Mount Rushmore. I
I
just meant like
understand
in
it.
the order you listed these folks. Do you have like a number 1? Is your number 1 like number 1?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think mine is
It
too.
will be no surprise when we get there, listeners. It will be no surprise who my number 1 is, and of
If
course,
you're listeners to
you'll
the
recognize
show,
it.
put your vote in right now who my number 1
Yes,
is and who Rob's number 1 is. Lock it in, press follow, subscribe with your lock in, and then see if you're not surprised if you know us or listen to the show. But
that
let's
would
go
be
with number
amazing
4.
to get that email. That's like, all right, this is what I thought each of you would choose, and then these are my thoughts afterwards. Very
I think
cool.
you'll be surprised with the 2, 3, and 4, but the number 1s, I think, listeners of the show, you should be able to get.
Yep,
But neither
100%.
here nor there. Who is your number 4?
Okay, well, if I am starting, it is the father of all comic books that I love. This is Stan Lee. Stan Lee has to go on the Mount Rushmore of nerdy and
Yeah,
geeky creators because of what he did for all of us over, I mean, a span of 60 years, right?
decades. Decades.
Decades and decades of characters, of movies, of thoughts, the perspective that he would bring to children and then, younger adults and people that would just follow this. There is no way to encapsulate the influence Stan Lee has had on American and world culture, from the throwaway comics that it kind of started with in the 60s to his stance of really trying to say something about the way society and the country was being through difficult times, through the civil rights movement, through Vietnam, through the Cold War, through all of these different things. Stan Lee was at the helm, guiding this storytelling, holding up a mirror to society in a way that was bright and fun and fantastic, and highlighted the very best parts of humanity, what makes heroes and what makes people super, through all of those things, and never shied away from it. Right, always made sure that like the company and the direction always kind of held true to who he was, good or bad, disagree with him or not. Like, it was very much holding up that mirror to what was going on, and at the same time telling fantastic stories out in the cosmos and out in, whatever you could make up as far as the science fiction and the fantasy goes for it. But I mean, here we are still talking about his creations and being super excited about the gigantic, billion-dollar blockbusters that are coming out, all from back in the 60s, Stan Lee drawn amazing fantasy comic books of superheroes in bright Pantone colors.
I mean, he did a really great job of knowing the lens of his medium, right? I mean, you have these fantastical characters that really couldn't exist in the real world, but they dealt with what was going on at the time in a real way. And that's probably one of the most powerful things that he did beyond creating these fantastical characters and universes and worlds and existences that really drive pop culture. It is pop culture.
Yeah.
Stan Lee is pop culture.
Yeah.
But knowing his lens and how he could use that real world was really powerful on how he balanced those things.
Like, I don't know that there's anyone alive, I mean, alive over the age of 10, who can't recognize Spider-Man, who
Right.
can't, you know what I mean? Like, that's huge.
That's global and it's real.
So I took a gigantic creator off of the board first round. Who are you going with on your first face on the Nerd Best Friends Mount Rushmore?
So on my version of the Mount Rushmore faces, it should also be no surprise because I'm such a horror fan. The first person I chose was Wes Craven. And Wes Craven
Okay.
is responsible for so much horror, particularly films, whether he was producing or writing or directing. And here's what's really funny. Majority of his filmography is horror from the 80s through the 2000s. He's responsible for things like Nightmare on Elm Street, and he's responsible for the original Scream, the first 2 films. He's responsible for some of the Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as Jason and some of the Friday 13th films. He did a remake of Dracula in the 2000s that was really popular. He just Swamp Thing in the 80s, just some of these really iconic
Yeah.
horror films he's directly responsible for. It's really funny because I'm looking through his filmography right now, and it's like Deadly Blessing, The Wishmaster, The Hills Have Eyes, Wes Craven's Chiller, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Music of the Heart, Pulse, The Fear, Legacy. Like it's really funny because he's got a couple of these that he probably produced or had a hand in it. It's like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
That was a Wes
Master.
Craven film?
I think he's a producer or a writer. I don't
Okay.
think he directed that, but let's see. I'm going to click on that and tell you exactly what he did. He was someone who did something. Here's the entire cast. Let's see. It looks like he was a producer. He had a hand in the creation of it. So, Wes Craven is my first pick. He just did so much. And of course, Scream is my favorite horror franchise. And I got to meet him, and I embarrassed myself mightily in front of him. And I do
Really?
have a Scream script, not like a Hollywood script, but a book script that is signed by him because he came and signed some books at USC. He was also an author. He wrote a couple books, and I had him sign the screen script back in like 98 or 99. So Wes Craven, just horror master.
Okay. Master of horror films, huge library, gigantic filmography, influential in the genre.
Yes.
Boom. That is your last horror movie novelist on Mount Rushmore. That slot is taken. I'm sure we will not hear about any other horror creators in this episode. So I'm going on
comment.
to I'm going on to my next one.
Okay.
And of course, we're talking about nerds. We're talking about the fantasy genre. We have to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit, and The Lord of the Rings. The absolute father of fantasy adventures as we understand them today. Not only an incredible work that continues to be important and cool, but what an incredible guy. Like, we are talking about a World War I veteran who was also an academic, right? He went to war. He saw the horrors and atrocities that World War I had to offer with trench warfare and mustard gas and young boys dying all over the place. Like, it's very, very terrible. And he came back from that and wrote a novel there and back again, and took that experience, made it into an allegory that not only highlighted the experience in that allegory, but talked about the things he saw again from a humanitarian perspective. What is it that makes the littlest things so important? What makes it so that the most unassuming people that you meet can be heroes and really make a difference in your life? And then, put a big veneer of awesome sword fights and magic spells and cool things on top of it. But the idea that he could walk away from that and then bring everyone something that talked about it, but in a way that made us feel like we were on an adventure and that everybody was important and that there was this fantastical world of imagination that would just get deeper and deeper and deeper the longer you went, in the gigantic long prose of the histories of the world and stuff that he created, right? There was definitely like, this is a story and it's allegorical. And then there was I am the greatest nerd you will ever meet, and I have the last 2,000 years of history for Middle Earth mapped out in exquisite detail in handwritten scribe all over my house and all of these different parchments and stuff. Like, he was for sure one of those, just like that nerd, that obsessive nerd that came up with this world and then just kept iterating and expanding and expanding. And we're still talking about him today. It is the 25th anniversary this year, I believe, of
the first film,
the second film,
the
Two
film,
Towers.
okay.
And which is funny because I think it was last year was the 25th anniversary of the first one. So this is the 25th anniversary of the second one. Whatever excuses theaters need to show gigantic all-day marathons and make money from nerds coming in, they'll take it. But we're still talking about it today. Those movies still hold up. The books are beautiful. Like, it's not a like, oh, do the books hold up? It's like, no, if you go back to those books, like, you can just grab passages out of there and analyze the prose and really look into what it is that he's trying to say when these characters speak, and find profound wisdom there. Like, he was a true writer and a true academic, not just a hack like the rest of us that are telling stories about elves and dwarves and sword fights, you know?
Well, he created his own universe to the extent, and his own world to the extent that it is timeless, right? You
Yes,
mentioned Stan Lee, and you can look at the decades and evolution of the storytelling there based on what was happening honest to the world. This is different in that
yeah,
it
very
exists within itself. Therefore, it is somewhat timeless. You could pick it
absolutely.
up right now and it's just as relevant.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So I've got a very good balance on either side of my Mount Rushmore.
But that also means you're not going to talk about any more fantasy and characters within the fantasy realm, right?
That's
Got him.
right.
Yeah, listen, okay, I'll talk about my second person then. That's what best friends do, by the way, is be jerks to each other because we're Gen X
Huh?
and that's what happens. That's how we show love. So my second person I chose is here's where I'm getting the realm of my people are still alive. I think you mentioned like thinking about people who have passed and would be memorialized. In this case, I chose Frank Darabont.
Mhm.
Frank Darabont is, along with Wes Craven, a creator of mostly films, but he also produces and he writes and he does other things. But he is, I put him on Mount Rushmore because he's able to take something that already exists and bring it to life in images, bring it out of people to make those characters come to life from the page to the screen, take these stories from page to screen in a manner that make a just real and good, and there's so much that he's done that is it's just so good. I'm constantly impressed with how he takes things from the page to screen. So he is responsible for a bunch of adaptations. He was responsible for the first season of The Walking Dead, which arguably is the best season and the best adaptation from the comic book to the television show. And I know that show continues on
Incredibly
for like
popular.
13 seasons or something, but
Thank
none
gosh.
none as good as the first in terms of how it adapts the comic books to the screen. He directed a couple episodes of the final season of Stranger Things, which isn't
Okay.
necessarily an adaptation, but it does require knowledge of how film and storylines worked in the 80s in order to make it. What the show did really well is recreate what was like in the 80s for mass media and events like this. To bring these modern teenagers and now early 20-something-year-olds to be able to be believable that they exist in a time where the internet and cell phones and 150 streaming services aren't available. You don't have the answer to everything, and to make it believable is very strong. Of course, my favorite movie of all time, Shawshank Redemption. Yes, it's a Stephen King adaptation, but he's that. The Green Mile was his.
Oh, yeah.
A few of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. He was inspired by George Lucas and how
Mhm.
George Lucas tells stories, but he's just responsible for so much, and everything he does is done very well. And if he can't do it well, he gives it to someone else, which I find very impressive. But Frank Darabont is he's a gem in terms of taking adaptations of things and really creating something that then becomes a permanent piece of pop culture structure.
I even see some Indiana Jones on his
Yes.
resume.
Yes.
I listen, hot take, The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones slap. Those are great shows.
Whatever he touches is done very, very well. There's nothing on that list that you go, "Eh," in
Right,
my
right.
opinion, and that's why he deserves a spot on Mount Rushmore of creators. He doesn't create these entities, but he adapts them to the screen in a way that makes them permanent in our pop culture minds.
Right. Well, that is 2 directors on your
Yes.
Mount Rushmore already, so I am sure there will be no more movie directors on
No,
your
none.
Mount
None at
Rushmore
all.
list coming up in the
No
future.
more.
Couldn't possibly
No
be.
more directors.
We're gonna move over to my third gigantic head carved into the mountain of Nerd Best Friends Mount Rushmore. And this one is a selfish pick for me. My other ones are like, listen, these people made the world better. Their influences, touches every person on the planet, blah, 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 blah. This one's for me. This one is Gary Gygax, inventor of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, yes. I don't think that's just for you. but I understand what
No,
you mean.
it is one of these things. It's just for nerds, right? It's just for me and
Yes.
the fact that like this isn't something that is like a worldwide impact. This is a very nerd impact though. And what's important about it is Dungeons and Dragons, because it was one of the first and got popular, it is that gold standard for role playing games, for getting around the table with a group of your friends, playing make believe into your adult years, rolling dice, eating pretzels, having a good time. It is for me and for a lot of us that elusive third space people are, psychologists are always talking about at this point. It's like
Yeah.
you've got home, you've got work, but then you have to have that other thing. And for me and for many people, that other thing is Dungeons and Dragons, right? Your group of friends that you get together with and just forget about life for a while and have some fun and have some jokes. Of course, wouldn't exist without my last one, J.R.R. Tolkien and that whole fantasy genre, right? You talk about Frank Darabont with the like, well, I didn't create elves and dwarves and mythical fantasy, but I've adapted it to this game and it's been super popular. The other thing that's so cool about Gary Gygax and Dungeons and Dragons is, yes, it is the most popular, gold standard. But over the decades, especially in the last few decades, where we have the internet, and of course, the internet is a wonderful, magical place where anyone can be a creator and anyone can publish and produce. You breaking down of gatekeepers, all the things that I love about technology and the internet. We've seen so many RPGs. We've seen so many games come out and iterations and heartbreakers. You were just, never mind. We have so many. I am always talking about like, oh, I love this, I love to go to like game stores and stuff and buy up little RPGs just to read through them and see what is someone else's take on this idea. What is someone else's take on this rule set and those kinds of things. For nerds like me who love role playing games and can see not only the Dungeons and Dragons of it all, but also just the way that that industry has grown and the new things that have come out and the way that so many different kinds of people are able to tell different kinds of stories with imagination games and funny looking dice is super important. And so Gary Gygax, my third face on Nerd Best Friends Mount Rushmore.
I'm gonna say, like, this is my Mount Rushmore. My picks are all for me, so I
All
don't
right.
think you did anything wrong there. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna imagine that listeners are like, you should have talked about this person. I mean, I don't think either of us have like technology people, which would be someone that
Yeah,
could help. I
Nikola
mean, there's
Tesla, not on my Mount
oh, I
Rushmore.
was thinking more like, this is why we don't want to do this because I'm gonna forget his name, but our Apple dude.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. There we go. Thank you. Steve Jobs could be on here. He created things that helped nerdy things everywhere. Like he's not on here. So 100% this is for me,
All right. All right. Good deal.
which I'll move to my second. And I'm going to say he's not a director, even though he has directed. But you want to talk about someone who's created a universe that is so impactful to the rest of everything that is nerd. We're talking about George Lucas. And I
Yes.
know we kind of went back and forth about who was going to get George Lucas, and I decided to take him. I'm not as big of a Star Wars nerd as you are, but I am a Star Wars nerd, somewhere on the spectrum of Star Wars nerds.
Kind of feel like
But I also,
everybody is a Star Wars
I
nerd.
mean, you have to
Unless
be,
you're
because
a
even if you're
jackwagon
not,
and you're like, I don't like Star Wars, just to be a jackwagon.
even people who have never seen it know who Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker is, right? Like, or who they are as characters. You can't escape Star Wars anywhere in anything at any time. There's just references everywhere, all because of this world that George Lucas built in his head while he was a student at USC. So it's one of those things that is unavoidable. If he's not on Mount Rushmore of creators, what are we even doing? I don't know. We could do a whole episode. We haven't done an episode on Star Wars. Maybe that's long overdue.
Really?
Um yeah, we haven't. I don't think we've had one specifically to talk about Star Wars, but I think we've talked about like our favorite Star Wars, but I don't think we've had and we've asked guests that, but maybe we're past due time to have an episode to talk about Star Wars. But
Well, that'd be super fun. Okay.
yeah, the universe he's created that now it was so good and so clean and so wonderful that we have years and years and years and years now, decades of extra stories being told around that universe that fit directly in that universe. And That's hard to do. If someone sits down to write a novel, to write a screenplay, very rarely does someone create an entire universe that you can keep creating around. J.R. Tolkien, like you said earlier on your Mount Rushmore, that's someone who created a whole world that we're still uncovering pieces that he built and had
And
in his mind.
so many of us are able to play in that space, right? Like George
Right.
Lucas isn't really involved in Star Wars anymore, but we've seen these great people like a Dave Filoni and a Jean Favre and also like grow into that space. And then because it's so big, not only are we seeing those movies and TV shows made, like the animated side of it is
Yes.
incredible. And how many people it has like employed and given art direction to. We role playing games, we see miniature games. Here's a chick with a lightsaber right here on my painting table. Like it spreads so much and it creates so much creative
Yeah.
opportunity for everybody else.
And you don't have to like the Star Wars movies to like The Mandalorian. There's so many people who like The Mandalorian that they don't. I mean, this is Star Wars? Like, what? Is to say, like, yeah, I just think he's created this thing that has allowed us to just have decades and decades and decades of good storytelling. And at the end of the day, which is why, while he has directed things, I think he is a storyteller and a universe creator in the same vein as Tolkien, as in the same vein as Stan Lee. He's a creator and is responsible. He should be on the Mount Rushmore. For both of us, all of us, every us, he can replace one of the presidents.
Could not agree more. I know I've recommended it before, but the book How Star Wars Conquered the Universe by Chris Taylor, absolutely fantastic, like deep dive into George Lucas and that whole creative process and that pathway and that idea of like the very humble beginnings and the struggles to make it happen back in the East and what that looked like. And then just the growth and spread and building of opportunities in different medias and genre. It's a fantastic read,
Have
if
you
you're also a book nerd.
have you ever seen the original trailer for the first Star Wars?
I'm sure I have. Remind me, what are you
I mean, our
getting at?
society wasn't ready for it. It so much. It's like a girl, a boy,
Yes, that's
and a something something. Like they didn't know how to market it. It was
uh-uh.
so new. You watch it like that's not Star Wars at all. They're trying to portray it as this little love story in space, and we know it's not a love story. Like it's
Right.
so interesting to see how much he had to sell this story to get it made, and then it blows up. The first one blows up, and we're 77. It blows up, and then he has to make the others, and yeah, it's pretty phenomenal what he's done.
No, that is really funny because you're right. It's like they had to put out a trailer that would attract audience, that would look familiar to
Yes.
audiences at that time. Speaking of that, the other one that I absolutely love is if you ever look up the Guardians of the Galaxy style Star Wars trailer, where
Oh
if you
my gosh,
remember the
yes. It's so
Guardians
good.
of the Galaxy trailer with the music in the background, it's what's that song? Something in the sky. Anyway, it's got that song
It's
going,
a
but it's
Guardians
all
of the
Star
Galaxy
Wars.
song. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's got the
Yeah.
Star Wars. Oh my God. Goosebumps. So good.
It's my other favorite thing when they take some of these really serious movies in this universe and they give it the Full House treatment. Have you ever seen those clips where it's
Mm-mm.
like, here's a Scream as if it were Full House? So they just take these shots of people
Yes,
turning the camera, smiling, and playing the Full House theme song, and like, here's the Mandalorian as if it was Full House.
absolutely.
Those
The
are
Mandalorian one
great.
especially is very funny.
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
good
It's
because
great.
it's amazing how much you could like emote those like cheesy camera turns when you
Uh-huh.
can't even see the person's face.
Uh-huh. It's so good. All right. Who is, we're down to number ones. Who is like, both of us decided, here's your peak person that's most important to be on the Mount Rushmore of creators. And now, listeners, if you went and sealed your envelope,
I
time
was
to
gonna say,
unseal them and see if you matched what you think our number ones are. Starting with
like a
you, Rob.
mentalist, I can announce it. They're gonna take the envelope off their head and open it up and be like, I got it right. Last chance. Place your bets. My fourth gigantic head sculpted into the mountain will be Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets.
Did you get it right?
Of course you did.
Of course
There's
you
no
did.
end to how Rob will gush about Jim Henson, because Jim Henson, for myself and for all of us, has created so much just pure joy and everything that is good about the world. I think it is, again, one of these creators that is generational. I grew up watching Sesame Street I grew up watching The Muppet Show. Next generation, my son grew up watching Sesame Street. It's the same show. For me, it was a lot of Big Bird and Mr. Hooper. For him, it was a lot of Elmo and Mr. Noodle. But it's there. It's the same, right? And it continues to go on, and it continues to be a source of family entertainment, of education, of absolutely laugh out loud comedy. Like they have struck this perfect balance of irreverence and wholesomeness throughout Jim Henson, the time Jim Henson was there, and onward through his legacy. Like that is one of the wonderful things about the Muppets. In fact, they even came out with a new pilot of like the Muppet Show relaunched that I watched, a little while ago, and you can tell the direction is the same. Like the puppeteers are a little different, the voices are a little different, but the structure, the format, and what they're trying to say and what they're trying to provide for everyone, like capital E everyone, is incredible. And it has lasted decades and decades and decades beyond the lifespan of Jim Henson. It continues to be a source of joy and happiness and pride in my life, and I hope it will be forever. I love Muppets.
This is such a good call, but I want to add to your list Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock, because that's also one
They're
that's
all Muppets.
Yes, and they are a little bit more mature. It's for a little bit older of a kid. So you grew up watching the Muppets. I mean, we still watch the Muppets now as adults, but Fraggle Rock
Like
was
Sesame
maybe
Street.
more for teenagers. Same as Sesame Street, the Muppets, and Fraggle Rock was more for like a teenager voice. So it's a bit more dialogue heavy. Their
Yeah, it was
storylines are a bit
telling
more
more of a story like a
complicated.
show
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
like trying to teach you something like a Sesame
Yeah,
Street.
so I loved Fraggle Rock. I think I like Fraggle Rock more than I liked Sesame Street growing up. So, but yeah, I mean, he created this cast of characters that are so simple and so good
Mm-hmm.
that they can be recreated without having to retell who they are. It's pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. When you see green.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. That's such a good call. Jim Henson. Talk about
Everything
being
from
ahead of his time.
the skill of the puppet, the music, like Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. Let's go.
So good. And retro now. They're retro.
Cool. If that makes them even cooler, then I'm all for it.
All right, folks. It
All right,
should
take
be
your
no
other
surprise to
envelope
you.
out of your pocket that you
Yes.
had, that you've been waiting
And
for.
also, whatever you are drinking right now, go ahead and get it in your hands, because Rob has created a Nerd Best Friends drinking game every time that I mention Stephen King. So there you go. He's been mentioned. Take a sip. Take a sip.
Nerdbestfriends.com. Buy your
Got your
koozies.
koozie. Stephen King, I would put him in the same category as all these guys, in that he's created so much that is in our zeitgeist, just in the world, globally. You can't mention Prom without having thoughts about Carrie, a high school prom, right? You have someone saying, I'm your number one fan. We know exactly where that's from. There are things he's responsible for that people don't really know that it's him on the onset, such as Stand By Me, which is one of those like Gen X coming of age films that everyone watched. And many people were adults before they realized there's that little title card at the very beginning says based off the novella by Stephen King. Most people missed it. He's responsible for so much pop culture.
He's responsible for the idea that nobody likes clowns. Before Stephen King, clowns were a source of joy and entertainment for children. He ruined it.
He did. Thank you, Pennywise. Thank you, Stephen King. Thank you, Tim Curry. Yeah, a whole generation of people afraid of clowns because of him. And what that wasn't necessarily, I mean, clowns were creepy. Let's just be real. They were still creepy.
No, clowns were full of joy. And
John Wayne Gacy. Come on now.
Slapstick comedy. Miming. It's an art.
It's the Joker. I'm just saying. Yeah. So, but you're not wrong. A whole generation of people just terrified of clowns because of him, and now their kids are terrified of clowns because their parents are terrified of clowns. Like it's just ripples of influence. There's just so much. You could be watching or reading just about any genre of anything, and you'll find a reference to an evil car or an evil clown or an evil this or a dog that goes crazy. Like there's just so many things he's created that are just part of the world that, you would be remiss to not have Stephen King up. And I will say, I know you made the joke, you're like, you're not going to have another horror person. I don't, because I think Stephen King's books, while they are in mystery, horror, thriller, suspense genres, he really actually writes about human nature. When
Mm.
you're reading the novella that becomes Stand By Me, you're reading a coming of age story about 11-year-old boys going on an adventure, and what it's like to what the final line in that novella is, you never quite have friends as an adult as you had when you were 11 years old, right? Like Shawshank Redemption, it's about human nature. Carrie is about human nature. Here's a girl who's got these powers, who has an overly overbearing, scary religious mom. She's made fun of by all of her friends. She's outcasted.
They're all gonna laugh at
And
you.
yeah, exactly. Which played beautifully. Like, just he writes about human nature. She snaps and uses her powers for bad and terrorizes people. And so you get that horror genre, but everything he writes is about human nature. And I think we get a lot of that as he has aged as well. So Stephen King. I also just want to drop real quick. I recently guested again on the podcast Fine Beats and Cheeses, where we talk a lot about Stephen King. So look out for that episode. I just want to throw that in there.
Okay.
We're going to have them on our show sometime soon, but they invited me back after talking about Fleetwood Mac with them a number of months ago. But Stephen King is that number one that I went on other podcasts to talk about Stephen King. So that's my number
Okay.
one. This should be no
Whew.
surprise.
Very good. Now, of course, we want to hear what your Mount Rushmore of geeky creators is. So please, what did you agree with? What do you disagree with? Do you have a completely different set of 4 that you would carve into the giant stone? Do you evaluate what the face would actually look like when you put it on there, when you make your decisions? Because Stan Lee with the big Stan Lee glasses carved, like that definitely was like, oh my God, the glasses and the mustache alone.
Yep.
We're good. We got to carve it into something.
Yeah. So now what Rob's going to do is create an STL file and 3D print our Mount Rushmores. I'm just kidding. Look at his face.
What a good idea.
All right. Taking that aside, Rob, what's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
The nerdiest thing I have done this week, or I have been doing, is I had this connection, this spark in my brain where I made this connection. At work, I do a lot of meetings and I do a lot of video meetings. And in today's world, when you get done with your Zoom call or whatever meeting, you always get this little pop-up or email at the end of like, your AI agent took notes for you on this meeting, and you get some worthless garbage recap of the meeting you were just in. And I went to an EdTech conference a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about hey, you don't have to just have that on in meetings. You can turn that on whenever and it'll listen to you and it'll give you a recap of the meetings. This is a way that you can empower your professional learning community at your school or your committee meetings or whatever. It's this exists. Start recording it and it'll give you notes for the people who missed, or if you need to go back or you need to fill out certain forms for your principal or whatever. This is a very helpful tool. And so I'm like, hey, you know what else I do is I keep a log of summaries of all the Dungeons and Dragons games we play, so that before the session, I can look at where we were and what we were doing. So unbeknownst to you, Annalise, during our Dungeons and Dragons games, I've been hitting record on voice memos on my phone as it sits there, and then throw it into one of those tools that will produce a nice, clean summary of our games for Dungeons and Dragons to help me keep track, especially when there's times where it's like, oh, it got canceled. It's another 2 weeks. Oh, it got canceled again. Now it's another 2 weeks. Oh, it got canceled again, etc. To keep track of those things, because these tools exist. They exist in the workspace a lot. Why can't they exist in the play space? So, I love to use the invites or invitations. Invites app.
Yes.
On our phone. I send out all the games there, and you will start to notice there's a nice, clean little summary of what we did the adventure before, thanks to using work tools as play tools and getting little meeting summaries for our games.
I did notice that. I assumed it was just a AI generated thing. I haven't clicked on it yet, but hey, we live in a consent party state. You're recording me without my consent. No, I think that's cool. I think it's a cool way to use AI, actually. And I'm going to disagree that they're garbage summaries, because I use one, I'm gonna forget the name of it. I have a free version of it, and it not only encapsulates the notes really well, it gives you trends from that meeting and it gives you next steps. It's really good. I'm considering getting the paid version of it and start recording like my admin meetings because it doesn't record. That's the other thing. Like this one doesn't record your voices. It takes it live and it doesn't
Mm.
hold on to that recording. It gives you the analysis and that's it. So I think it's great. And to use it for Dungeons and Dragons, genius. Because it's been a month since we last played our Saturday game, and we'll play it this weekend
Yeah,
when this
that's what
airs.
I was
So
thinking is like
yeah.
you could look at the invitation and it would give you those like bullet points of like, oh yeah, that's where we were. I could get in that
Right.
headspace real quick.
I had totally forgotten before the last one we played almost a month ago where I was like, I can't quite remember where we're at. I logged in like, oh yeah, it's this puzzle.
Whatever. That was a fun puzzle. You guys did
It
great.
was a good puzzle, but I was like, oh no, well, we don't have a good track record with those things. Sometimes they've taken like an hour. That's why my reaction.
You've grown and developed as players and as player characters to do better at puzzles.
Actually, my instinct was to put the one that was supposed to be in the center. I clicked on that one first and changed my mind. I talked myself out of it. I should have went with my gut instinct, but
Well,
it's okay.
it all made
One of the
sense
other
once you do
characters
it.
figured it out.
All right, Annalise, what's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Nerdiest thing I did this week is, I fell into the documentary. I don't know if these are called documentaries anymore, but these like limited series things that they are starting to produce on like Netflix about things that happened 20 years ago or more. But, I used to watch America's Next Top Model. 20 plus years ago. I watched the first handful of cycles and then it started to get a little ridiculous. But it was such a big thing. And then it's really interesting because this little 3-episode series starts with the fact that the show has just existed and it's been available for streaming for years and years and years. No one paid attention to it. And then 2020 happened and everyone was shuttered in and started just going into the like backlog of things on Netflix. And people found America's Next Top Model and started watching it in the 2020 lens, which was like 15 plus years difference.
Yeah, okay.
There was this big backlash at the time of like Gen Z looking at this or Gen Z looking at going, this is awful. Why was this ever a show? Because it really doesn't hold up. It doesn't age into
Sure.
what we do now. Like the height of reality shows at the time, you had like Fear Factor, just putting people in ridiculous situations. You
Which I
had
think is back.
Survivor. It's back. So maybe we cycled back around, but
Mhm.
it's like Fear Factor light compared to what they used to put people through in
Okay.
the 90s, right? Like
Okay.
in the early 2000s. So, we had those types of shows. America's Next Top Model fit into that category. They created this like monster of a show that influenced a whole lot of things. So in 2020 people started looking at it in a more modern lens, and there's just all this backlash about Tyra Banks and how awful the show was and stuff. And I kind of ignored it. It's like kind of whatever. But they made this 3-part series on Netflix and it was really interesting.
Okay.
It was really interesting to see things in that lens. And even me going, yeah, when this thing happened the first season, I remember what they showed us on television was just a little piece of it. What actually happened behind the screens, like they should have stepped in and stopped. And talking about some of the things that they did in between. And it was real interesting to see Tyra Banks try to defend herself, which I don't think she did very well. She kept saying like,
Mhm.
oh, well, that was the producers. And I didn't know that this was happening. Like, I don't think she was, it's really interesting. So I nerded out about that and went back and watched a couple of the early episodes. And like, it was total flashes of memories that have
Mhm.
just gone away, right? Like, well, yeah, I remember this. That's the nerdiest thing I did this week, was kind of nerd out about.
That's so interesting. I heard a recommendation on another podcast of the very similar thing for the reality show The Biggest Loser. And there's a
Yes.
documentary about just how terrible behind the scenes it was to like break these people down. And that same kind of thing with Tara Banks is like the lady who was that
Julian
fitness
Michaels.
Julia Michaels and her
Yes.
complicity in it and like how like the millions that she made, springboarding off of that and how like dirty that money is and stuff like. So that would be your next one
I
to watch, I
watched that
think.
one too.
You watched it
I
already. Okay.
highly recommend it. It was really interesting, especially, as an adult, well, as a teen, I've struggled with weight my entire life once I hit adolescence. And it's just something that runs in my family. Also, I've done a lot of work about like reading about what it's like to grow up poor. You grew up on government assistance. And this is not EBT government assistance. This is like government cheese and boxed mashed potato powder and stuff like that, to have grown up on that processed food and how it impacts you as an adult and the food choices you make. Like, I've done a lot of work around that. And I listened to a podcast called Maintenance Phase, which talks a lot about all the ways we have been lied to about everything we consume in America. It's really good. I recommend that as well. If you want something to listen to, Maintenance Phase is really, really good. And they just talk about all the things. Latest episode, they talked about the Herbalife trend and how that was really just, it was basically meth in a pill, and how
Damn, I gotta get some of that right now. That's the only thing that's gonna help me lose weight. I know the
killed like 87
and the
people.
Herbalife, they took it all off the market.
They talk about all of that stuff, but they tell you what's actually happening and why those things were allowed to happen and what lobbyists create. Like, it's really interesting. They lay it all out there. And the Biggest Loser documentary did the same thing. And Jillian Michaels is still trying to defend herself out of it, even though there's just all this evidence that they gave these people like caffeine pills to get them to lose more weight and had them dehydrate themselves during weigh-in ceremonies so they didn't have water weight, and how they exploited this food noise that goes on in the head for people who struggle with this by putting a plate of donuts in front of them and then shaming them for choosing those donuts. It's really good to look at it at the lens of like 20 years later. Really, really interesting on how we now think about the people who struggle with that stuff, and how we now think about the modeling industry, and how now you can flip the pages, I will say, of a magazine, but people don't really hold magazines anymore, but you will see ads of all sizes, shapes, and colors of people as you scroll. We didn't have that in the 90s and 2000s. Everyone was scary skinny, and everyone was really white, and Tyra Banks had good intentions in creating this show, but then fell into the listening to the producers or making the decisions herself. It remains to be seen, but I nerded out about that, and I highly recommend the Biggest Loser one. The Next Top Model one is kind of like if you didn't watch the show.
Gotcha. All right, great recommendations. Thank you. Just lay down. Nerd Trivia returns with more fun, wrong answers only, and maybe more confusion point. Nerd Trivia returns with more fun, wrong answers only, and maybe more confusing point systems from Dr. Intern Joan. Before you go, join us. Hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you felt the nerd love, drop us a 5-star rating and help more nerds find their people. Find us on social at Nerd Best Friends or email us podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Grow the nerd herd, spread the geeky joy, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, I'm super excited. Another round of nerd trivia. I think we're going to invite our Patreons to be in the studio with us. Like, it's going to be a good time.
Well, that'll be
check out that episode.
An increase in pressure as I stumble my way through trying to remember stupid names of people. God darn it.
Same. It's going to be fun. Pressure is good. All right, go. Time to go 3D print those Mount Rushmores.
What an idea. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right. Thanks, nerds. See you next time.